What if one of Ford's most humble cars was secretly transformed into a powerhouse capable of taking on sports car royalty? Back in the 1970s, one man named Jack Stratton saw an opportunity to do just that. He took a basic economy car and turned it into something no one expected. Faster, sleeker, and more daring than anyone could have imagined. It was a car that could hold its own against the Datsun 240Z and the Porsche 914. Yet it flew under the radar. Why? Because most people have never even heard of it. Meet Ford's best-kept secret, the Pinto Pangra. Jack wasn't your average car dealer. Based at Huntington Ford in California, he was the kind of guy who just didn't sell cars, he dreamed of making them better. While others were still trying to squeeze life out of big V8 muscle cars, Jack saw the writing on the wall. Insurance rates were skyrocketing, emission standards were cracking down, and the age of gas-guzzling beasts was fading. Instead of lamenting the loss, Jack embraced the future. And his canvas for this new vision? The unassuming, lightweight, and, to put it kindly, boring Ford Pinto. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Most people saw the Pinto as nothing more than a cheap commuter car. And honestly, they weren't wrong. It was light, about 2,000 pounds, making it a featherweight by American car standards. But it wasn't fast, sleek, or even remotely exciting. Yet Jack saw potential where others didn't. He knew this little car could be transformed into something incredible. But how do you sell a performance car when its base version looks like something your grandma might drive to the grocery store? The answer? You start with the looks. Jack teamed up with Bob Crow, a fiberglass specialist, to give the Pinto a dramatic facelift. They completely ditched the boring front end and replaced it with something sleek, sharp, and downright aggressive. Imagine a C3 Corvette and a shark had a baby. That's the vibe they went for. The new front end featured a long pointed nose, hand-operated pop-up headlights, slimmed-down fenders, and a more angular profile. Oh, and it made the car a full 10 inches longer in the front. Suddenly, the Pinto wasn't just a commuter car anymore. It looked ready to take on the racetrack. But what about the back? Well, they didn't mess with it much. The rear end, doors, and quarter panels remained pretty stock. Why? Probably because Jack knew the front end would steal the show, and let's be honest, budgets weren't unlimited. Now you might be wondering, did the Pinto just look cool or could it actually perform? Spoiler alert, it performed. Looks alone weren't going to cut it. To turn the Pinto into a real sports car, Jack had to focus on the handling. He partnered with Kone to develop a custom suspension package. They added specially valved shocks, dropped the car by 2 inches, and slapped on 7-inch wide magnesium wheels. They also reworked the suspension geometry to make the car more agile. The result? The Pinto Pangra could dart through corners like a go-kart on steroids. According to a brochure from Huntington Ford, it could pull .874 Gs on a skid pad before losing grip. For context, cars like the Datsun 240Z and the Porsche 914 only managed around .73 Gs. That's right, this little Pinto could outhandle some of the most respected sports cars of its time. Let that sink in for a moment. Now let's talk power, because what's the point of all that handling if you're stuck with a weak engine, right? Jack knew the stock Pinto engine wouldn't cut it, so he upgraded it with a turbocharger, giving the car some serious horsepower for its size. Suddenly, this little subcompact wasn't just nimble, it was fast enough to surprise anyone who underestimated it. And here's the thing, Jack didn't just want the Pinto Pangra to compete with other American cars. He wanted it to go head-to-head with imports. Cars like the Datsun 240Z and Porsche 914 were dominating the scene, and Jack's vision was to beat them at their own game. Now, all that was left was to inject some serious power into the Pinto. And Jack Stratton had a plan so bold it might make your gearhead uncle raise an eyebrow. The stock Pinto engine, a humble 2-liter inline-4, was, well, let's be honest, about as exciting as plain toast. With just around 90 horsepower, on a good day, it wasn't setting any land speed records. But Stratton had no interest in stuffing a massive V8 under the hood. Why not? Because that would have turned the car into a heavy, unbalanced mess, especially in the corners. Instead, he decided to focus on something revolutionary: turbocharging. Why turbocharging, you ask? Well, back in the 70s, this wasn't exactly a mainstream idea for compact cars. But Stratton wasn't aiming for ordinary. He teamed up with legendary tuner Ack Miller. Together, they decided to bolt on an air research turbocharger onto the Pinto's little engine. What did that do? Oh, nothing much. Just nearly doubled the power from 90 horsepower to a whopping 175 horsepower. But wait, how do you turbocharge an engine like that without blowing it to pieces? This is where the real magic happened. First, they lowered the engine's compression ratio to 7:1, creating a boost-friendly setup. Then they added water injection. Yes, water injection. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it helped keep the engine cool under pressure and prevented it from self-destructing. Oh, and get this, they even managed to keep it EPA compliant. That's right, when other turbocharged cars like the Yanko Turbo Vega couldn't get the green light, the Pinto Pangra breezed through emissions testing like a straight-A student. Pretty impressive, huh? So, what was the result? A 0 to 60 time of just 7.5 seconds. That's not just quick, it's neck-snappingly fast for a car like this. And the quarter mile? Low 15 seconds. To put that in perspective, this little Pinto was faster than the Datsun 240Z and even the Porsche 914. Can you believe it? But Stratton didn't stop there. He wanted the Pangra to be more than just a performance beast. He gave it a sleek new look, including a fiberglass front fascia that made the car look less like a grocery getter and more like something that belonged on a racetrack. Inside, buyers could get Recaro seats and a special dashboard, giving it a touch of sophistication. Now, here's where it gets interesting. You couldn't just stroll into any Ford dealership and buy a Pangra off the lot. Instead, there were a couple of ways to get your hands on one. The first option was to buy a fully assembled Pangra from Huntington Ford. For around $5,000, you got the whole package: turbocharger, suspension upgrades, the works. But if that price tag felt a little steep, there was another option: DIY kits. These kits came in 3 levels. Level 1, priced at $600, was just the fiberglass front fascia. You could install it yourself and give your Pinto a more aggressive look. Level 2, just under $1,000, was all about suspension upgrades. It included lowering springs, Coney shocks, and sway bars to make the car handle like a dream. And then there was the big one, Level 3. This $1,691 kit had everything you needed to turbocharge your Pinto, including the turbocharger, water injection system, and all the hardware. Here's a fun twist: you couldn't buy the special dashboard separately. So even if you combined all the kits, your DIY Pangra would never be quite the same as the factory-built version. It was like trying to bake a cake without the secret ingredient. But who exactly were buying these kits? Enthusiasts, of course. Stratton's vision struck a chord with people who wanted a performance car without breaking the bank. Estimates suggest that Huntington Ford sold between 20 and 50 complete Pangras, and possibly hundreds of kits to DIYers and racing enthusiasts. These cars were often customized with unique paint jobs and decals, making each one stand out on the track.
Reese here the right lane with the 4-cylinder Pinto. Mustang in the left lane moves forward, gets full stage. Jimmy Reese full stage.
Another fun fact, despite its humble beginnings, the Pinto Pangra earned respect among notable drivers in motorsports. Some even claimed it could hold its own against more established competitors. Isn't it fascinating how an underdog can surprise everyone? Fast forward to today, and the Pangra is a rare sight. With so few made, finding one is like spotting a unicorn at a car show. But why didn't it become a bigger success? That's the million-dollar question. Maybe it was ahead of its time. Maybe people couldn't wrap their heads around a high-performance Pinto. Or maybe it was just too expensive for the average buyer. Whatever the reason, the Pangra quietly faded into obscurity. And think about this. How often do we see cars that challenge conventions like this one? The Pinto Pangra was a statement. It proved that even the most unassuming vehicles can become something extraordinary with a little creativity and a lot of innovation. And isn't that what makes car culture so exciting? Now, would you have ever guessed that a Pinto, of all things, could be turned into a Porsche slayer? Didn't think so. But that's exactly what makes the Pangra's story so fascinating. It proves that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places.